Alright everyone, so if you're watching this video, you probably watched the first one. If you haven't seen the first video, then this is what that video looks like, and I'll put a link to that in the description of this video, just down there or somewhere, wherever it is. So anyway, in the last video I did a bit of tidying up and I reconfigured the diff upper mount fixing points, and I sort of did a bit of cutting on the inside, which broke my heart more than it broke yours. Trust me. I had quite a few comments, like personally, where I've put the video elsewhere, and a lot of people were kind of having a bit of a sad, saying that I shouldn't have cut the car and stuff like that. Well, the thing is, the diff is necessary for the power, the gearbox is necessary for the power, and it's either I modify this tunnel and make it better than original, or I raise the car 3 inches. So which one do you guys reckon I'm gonna go for? So that aside, the first cab off the rank for as far as jobs go today is I'm going to lift this guy up, throw the tail shaft in, and I'm going to knock the springs out of the back and check the articulation and make sure that what I've cut is actually good enough, and what I've sort of pushed out of the way is going to be ample as well, so that I can start to make the tunnel. Okay, line of sight, it looks pretty good. But what I'll do, seeing as I have this magical lifty thing, it's going to knock these springs out here, and I'll put some stands on the ground, and we'll check the articulation from the inside, and we can see if everything's going to clear or not. I had a couple of other issues that I need to fix up. You can see where stuff was sort of like rubbing on the drive shaft here, which is that bracket for the fuel lines, which I'm not sure if I'm going to move them or not. And there was this one as well, which was actually the bolt up the back there. You see those guys are in line. Hopefully this is in focus. And so the solution is to knock the excess off of that bolt, and that should clear that. As you can tell, this car's pretty tiny. Hence like all the weird stuff that's going on with it. So one of the other issues is that the box is really close to the tunnel there. On this side it's not too bad, but on the other side it's like really close, because this car was designed to run the K50 box, which is commonly found the same type as in a KE70 Corolla and the A85 and stuff. So what I'm going to do is mark that, and then I'll pull the box out after this, and we'll clearance the tunnel, and we'll put the box back in. It's I assure you again, this is more painful for me than it is for you watching it. Yeah, as I said, I really love this car, but you know, onwards and upwards. Okay, so for the most part, it's got a lot more clearance everywhere. I can fit my hand fully down there, and this is on the bump stops as well. So it looks like I might even cut this further down and then manipulate the tunnel so it like pulls in a bit. But this is a good place to be. Everything clears now, and it's going to be pretty simple. I'm actually not going to have to make as much of a tunnel as I had imagined. And yeah, this is really good. I could even just put a flat plate on top of this. That would even work. That's pretty awesome. So it looks like most of my troubles were the fact that the tunnel was really narrow and that it was like rubbing in here on the inside of this part here. So yeah, I guess that's a pretty good outcome. So I'll probably just cap that flat. It'll be a lot easier to make and a lot easier to manipulate, a bit easier to weld and stuff. So I'll go ahead and do that. Alright, it's been a minute and I got this guy up on the lift. It's having some sort of weird clutch problems. It's feeling some issues, and well, this is a long story short. This is what my crank now looks like. It's some high spots on there. It's not too great. So what ended up actually happening was the flywheel bolts had come loose. This is also like really crusty as well. So flywheel bolts had come loose and the flywheel was moving just like this. And also the flywheel was coming in and out, like pulsing in and out. It was making some pretty bad noises. Luckily the box is safe. I dropped the box fluid and it was perfect. So my W5 box is all good. Yeah, so leads me to the next thing. So inside the box, we ended up with this malarkey. Yeah, it's not too great. You can see how beat up the inside of this bell housing is. That's what vibration does to you. So all these times I had all the rear end vibration problems, actually damaged the threads from this one and this one, bell housing bolts. And the bell housing bolts were actually flinging around inside the bell housing. So yeah, that was great. So left with a bunch of them here, Loctited in. But obviously, like they've copped damage like afterwards. Here's what the clutch cover looks like, which is pretty sad. You can see how beat up a clutch cover can get when there's a bolt flying around inside there. You can see this edge here as well, where that was gouging the bell housing. Now the clutch itself, this is a modified XCD clutch. This is a Cusco like bimetal plate. You can see where the friction material is just delaminated. So you know that's no good. So here's the back of the flywheel. I'm hoping to at least try and save the crank. But yeah, no promising anything at this point in time. If I can save the crank, that'd be really awesome, because the cranks aren't really easy to get. I do have a whole spare parts car, and it would be really awesome to like repair the motor, but I'm not really holding my breath at this point. Yeah. So one thing led to another, and now the motor's on the ground. But what happens next will shock you. So I always thought I would need to do some routine maintenance on this motor, but I'm honestly really surprised that this motor lasted this long. So I built this motor originally with a GT2876R on it. In the first car it was intended for, which is a KE70. 9 years ago I built the motor, and it was Boxing Day in 2010 that I actually put it in the motor and fired it up for the first time. So this particular motor has been untouched. The head has stayed on it, is unopened since it was assembled 9 years ago. So this motor has been making over 300 horsepower for about 8 of those years, and at least 7.5 of those years it's been making mid 300 at the wheels. It's now been in 2 cars, and I, as previously said, sold the original car and then ended up buying this back. But yeah, the amount of weird stuff that happens when you're spinning a motor this high is really, really remarkable, and it's something that people should really take a note of and be aware of. So you all saw the stuff going on with the flywheel and the back of the crank. Well, when I went to take the crank pulley off, this nut had come loose. And now, so the thread is a little bit scungy on this bolt, if it'll focus you. Yeah, so the thread's a little bit scungy, but you can see that it has been actually like moving. If you look down here at the crank pulley, which is the first thing I investigated, there's like all those artifacts just like the flywheel, and keen eyes will see where the keyway is, it's actually cracked. So my harmonic balancer is cracked as well, and that was pretty ready to let go. Another weird thing, after investigating, is the artifacts on here. Now, if you look at this really closely, you can see just here where this washer has moved on the keyway, and it's actually been eaten away by the key. So I'll definitely need to replace that. The timing belt also has some weirdness. It's starting to fray on the edge. Now, this was a brand new, genuine Toyota belt. I can't praise the genuine stuff enough. It's lasted, so this motor also additionally has done 53,000 kilometers. For a modified 4AG punching that much horsepower, I mean, I have a lot of mechanical sympathy, but it's pretty phenomenal for it to last that long. So the previous failure that I had just recently, which spurred this on, was that it threw the belt. Now you can see here where the alternator has actually slipped. So what happened was, because the alternator's standard drive, the alternator armature expanded out into the field coil and jammed the alternator. Then it pulled the alternator close to the water pump and through the belt. And then I sort of lost power, and I had to sort of, for the first time, get towed, which is pretty remarkable. Now, it's not the first time I've had alternator problems with this car. I've had failures, fires, just delamination, all kinds of stuff with alternators. So this refresh, I'm going to have an alternator pulley made up about 70 odd millimeters long in diameter, not length. So yeah, it'll underdrive me to the minimum point that I need to do the RPM that I really want, which is, for the street, it runs about 9,600, which is still pretty hectic. But with this turbo, I don't really need to rev it that high anymore, because the previous turbo was just massive, and you really needed to rev it higher for the power band. So with this turbo now, I have almost 5,000 RPM of power band, where I'm over 310, 315 horsepower, and man, that's heaps. The Starlet recently went 12.0 at 119 at our local drag strip. Also have a video of that. So this will be getting a bit of a refresh. I still have to decide what other components I want to replace and have a look at, but it definitely looks like I'm probably going to pull the sump off and make a few changes, things that I maybe compromised on previously, but still keeping the 2.5-inch exhaust, which, to make that power on 2.5 inch, is still pretty good. Yeah, I'll just give it a bit of a refresh. It's probably time. Like I said, it's 9 years this little battler's been going. So yeah, go 4AG. So if you're wondering how I'm going to have a go at the crank, I've got this little Scotch-Brite pad in the back of the grinder. Just going to try and tickle that thing until it sort of comes up, and I'll see if I can either completely damage the crank or maybe hopefully save it and save this motor. So the longevity of this motor will hinge on this operation, so I'm just going to take it easy and see what I can do. So here's our kind of end result. Just had to take a bit of roughage off of there. The hub, basically, that is. But yeah, the crank's like all flat. All these marks here you see are depressions. Yeah, I just sort of like checked with a flat and scraping the flat backwards and forwards. It's how I did my training on how to find the flat stuff. And yeah, so I think this is good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to chuck a flywheel on it and put a dial gauge on it, and then just make a few turns, and yeah, it should be good.